To the Joint Force standing watch across distant bases, this was the moment that had been building for decades, a turning point tied to years of tension and unresolved conflict. And as orders moved quietly through command channels across Bahrain and the UAE, 20,000 troops were placed on full combat readiness for an operation centered on the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical waterways on the planet, where a single disruption could shake the global economy. And before sunrise, transport trucks rolled into position outside barracks as soldiers moved with focus and discipline, loading rucksacks with uniforms, medical kits, rations, and personal gear, not knowing how long they would be deployed or what exactly awaited them, but understanding the seriousness of the mission. And without hesitation, they boarded and moved out toward airfields, where the scale of the operation began to take shape, while nearby airborne units prepared in silence, checking parachutes, securing weapons, and stepping into formation before marching toward massive C-17 Globemaster III aircraft lined across the runway with open ramps, engines humming, ready to lift them into the sky and carry them ahead of the main force, where they would be the first boots on the ground. And at another location, ground crews worked around a B-52 stratofortress, loading heavy ordnance with careful precision, each bomb secured into place as crew members prepared for a long-range mission that would stretch for hours, checking oxygen systems, reviewing flight plans, and readying themselves for the moment they would be called into action. And as the engines came alive one by one, the aircraft taxied forward and lifted into the sky, carrying with it the weight of the operation's firepower, while far out at sea aboard the USS Tripoli, Marines prepared for their own deployment, moving across the deck with gear in hand as CH-53 helicopters unfolded their rotors and roared to life, lifting off into the air and heading inland to link with advancing units. And across Allied airfields, UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters moved in constant rotation, carrying troops forward in precise, repeated runs, landing, unloading, and returning for more, building a steady flow of personnel into forward positions until the air itself seemed filled with motion and purpose. And when the transport aircraft reached the drop zone, paratroopers stood, hooked in, and one by one stepped out into open sky, descending rapidly before regrouping on the ground, gathering equipment and moving toward rally points where vehicles and support units soon joined them. And slowly but steadily, every piece of the force came together, units linking up, establishing communication lines, setting defensive perimeters, and preparing for coordinated action, until 20,000 Marines and Rangers stood assembled, fully equipped and ready, waiting only for the signal to begin. And when that signal finally came, the operation moved forward with speed and precision as the first wave struck the coastline under heavy aerial cover, landing craft pushed toward shore, and troops moved out quickly, advancing inland while helicopter gunships provided support from above, targeting defensive positions and clearing paths forward. And along the coastline, missile systems that had once threatened the waterway were identified and destroyed, one after another, radar installations collapsing into smoke as coordinated strikes removed the immediate danger. And as the first objectives were secured, additional waves followed, pushing deeper inland, maintaining momentum, and tightening control over key areas. And by the time the sun began to lower in the sky, every major missile site near the Strait of Hormuz had been neutralized, shifting the balance of control and opening the path to the next phase of the operation, where forces moved toward critical infrastructure, advancing carefully toward major power facilities, securing them without damaging essential systems, maintaining operational control while avoiding unnecessary destruction. And under continuous air support, the mission continued as resistance weakened and positions were secured one after another, until the situation reached a breaking point and signals of surrender began to emerge across Iran, marking a sudden and decisive shift in the conflict as the immediate threat was removed and the strategic waterway was effectively reopened. And as daylight faded into evening, troops stood across secured positions, exhausted yet steady, watching as the waters they had fought to protect began to return to normal activity, ships moving once again through the passage that had been under threat. And as night settled in, operations shifted from combat to stabilization, with units maintaining security while preparing for the next phase. And by the following morning, orders were given to begin withdrawal as helicopters and transport craft returned to carry troops back. and across communication lines, a final message confirmed what had been achieved: the mission complete and objectives secured. And as the fleet began to move out, led once again by the USS Tripoli, carrying thousands of service members who had taken part in the operation, what remained was not just the outcome, but the scale of coordination and execution that made it possible. Every movement timed, every unit connected, every action part of a larger effort that restored control over one of the world's most critical routes. And as the coastline faded into the distance and the journey home began, the significance of what had taken place settled in, not just as a military success, but as a defining moment shaped by discipline, precision, and resolve. A moment that would be remembered long after the operation itself had ended and the forces had